Welcome to the Year of APing Dangerously podcast. Here's your host, Kathy Walker.
Hello and welcome to the Year of APing Dangerously podcast. And wow, when I say APing dangerously, there's been nothing more dangerous than this year. As I'm recording it, it is 2020 and we are in June at this time. And I know during the pandemic, when we had lockdowns and were forced to be inside, and the instinct was, oh, I should be doing podcasts. And I know, I couldn't. I was not feeling it. I did not feel encouraged. And even though on the face and when I had to deal with meetings with staff and students, and my brave little toaster face was always like, oh, it's going to be better. We're going to come out on the other side in such a better place. And now as we sit over 90 days into what we're dealing with as a country, as a society, I guess I don't have that optimism, which probably is not the time to be doing a podcast, but maybe that tells me that, hey, I need to record these thoughts. If the whole idea of doing this podcast from the very beginning, and for those of you who have listened to our other episodes up to this point, you know that one of the reasons I wanted to do a podcast, what's the point, was because of getting that honor of being named the North Carolina Assistant Principal of the Year. And I felt like, yeah, that's good. That's nice. And I really, really appreciate it. And am so thankful for the people that I worked with and all the stakeholders that were a part of the Troutman Middle community that I think helped me get that award, because if it were not for them, I wouldn't have been able to accept that kind of honor. But I always felt like I don't know it all, and there is so much more I want to learn. And what better way for someone who has, prior to education, spent time in the entertainment field as a stand-up comedian, as a disc jockey, and even going way back to college radio, that, hey, talking and using my voice, that is a way to kind of learn and grow and know. And that is why I wanted to do a podcast, so that I can interview those leaders, those people who are principals, who are district leaders, building leaders, who are teacher leaders, who are making those kind of growth mindset changes and things that need to be done in order to be better leaders, so that I could learn and I myself might be a better leader. So that was kind of the point and the goal of the whole podcast. And I think in dealing with this COVID-19 situation and where we are in the world, I really, honestly, at the start of it, thought, you know what, we are going to come out on the other side so much better. We're going to learn so much about ourselves as we see where things had to shut down. And basically it was like the world saying, hey, we got to put some pause for the cause, that we had to stop things for a little bit. That meant a lot of working from home and navigating what everybody was calling the new normal. It also meant that now, instead of school, we were going to have a different version of school, a different version, I guess, of homeschooling. What was interesting, I know, for me, back in March when this first happened, I actually had the opportunity to go to something called PodFest, which was actually a convention of podcasters from all over the country. Buzzsprout, which is the service I use to kind of push out the podcast, actually had a contest, and I was one of the people to get a free invitation to this particular. See what happens when you sit at home for like 90 plus days, your mind turns to jello and it becomes, you can't even think of simple things as conferences. And I know for me, it has been a year of conferences, because after getting that title of AP of the Year, I actually was able to attend a couple of different conferences. But I think just having that honor gave me a little bit of confidence, because some of the things I had done as an assistant principal working with my instructional coach, we actually came up with some learning to start a conversation, especially about unconscious bias and culturally relevant teaching and some strategies. And we just really wanted to open up a conversation because I always felt that my district kind of looked at it and poked at it and picked around it, but we never really actually kind of picked at that scab. And it seems as though our society is saying, hey, there's a big gaping wound here, and we gotta take a look in and take a dive in. So that might be something we will be talking about a little more on a future podcast, is getting into some of the things we talked about with the conversations about some of our unconscious bias and how that does impact race. And that seems to be something that we are struggling with as a nation, our original sin. But anyway, getting back to somewhere around the corner of where I thought I was going with this podcast, and what I wanted to talk about today is just the situation that we find ourselves in. Again, at the time of this recording, it's June of 2020. And even though we have been in lockdown for probably 90 days, I know for myself, I was still working as a building administrator. I was going in at least once a week. And at one point, I was actually worked a solid week helping to deliver meals. For us in North Carolina, it came down to kind of 3 directives that came from our state government as far as education was concerned. And that was that we had a remote learning plan for our students. We provide food or meals and a way to get those to our students, as well as providing pre-K childcare for essential workers, those folks who had no choice, had to be at work. At the time for us, it was right before spring break, and we had an early spring break. So about mid-March, as I mentioned, I was going to this podcasting conference and down in Florida, and on the way back, it was like, okay, we have spring break, but that's when a lot of the things with the virus started to break, and we were basically getting shutdown orders and things were kind of shutting down. So we actually did not return from spring break as planned, but we were kind of open for staff, not for students, till even at that point, it got to a point where, okay, you know what, we're closed for staff, we're closed for students, and, we really need to think this thing through. And reducing a high school that, thrives daily with over 1,000 bodies to kind of less than 10. And that also meant our custodial staff was tasked to work also, because we still had to do the business of delivering food. That meant our TAs, our teacher assistants, who were hourly employees, were still working, and as well as our administrative staff. We had some of our front office people covering phones and bookkeepers and just doing some of the business that still needed to be done, because even though we were locking down, we still had to look at, hey, we have seniors who need to still get information in for college and still need to plan on having a graduation. And at that time, we didn't even know what a graduation would look like. A lot of people were thinking, well, hey, by June, it'll be settled down. And, by end of May, when we graduate, things will be fine. Things will look more like normal. But again, looking now, here we are mid-June. The new normal is something way, way different than we ever expected. So where does that bring me with the podcast? Well, like I said, as far as on the face of it, I was thinking, you know what? as a society, we are going to come out of this on the other side. We are going to be so much better because we're going to learn things about each other because families are going to have to sit inside and be together and not everything, can be resolved by, just all spacing out and just coming back for that one meal that, we're going to have meals together. We're going to have, family time together, whether it's, computer games together or puzzles or what, that we are going to be spending time in the house and spending time together and really kind of connecting and bonding in a way that maybe with internet and cell phones and all the technologies that we don't get a chance to do, whereas this is going to force us to do it. And unfortunately, I thought, oh yeah, that's going to make us just so much more better as a whole, as a collective. And I think in a lot of ways it has helped people because you know what? Our focus has been, at home and with each other, but then having to deal with that. Okay, so this is my work time. So now I have to do my work from home and get in that mindset. And then, but wait, I still have to help my kids and teach them. And oh my gosh, what's the boxes and the lattice? And I can't do this math. What are they kidding me? Is this what they're doing in history? Are you? Again, all those questions, because you really have to ask. Now, there are some parents who do it well, who nail it all the time and have a sense of what their kids are doing and are very involved. I know for me, going from middle school to high school, I noticed that there is kind of like this gradual kind of letting off and whereas in elementary school, parents seem to be so there, so connected, so a part of the PTA, PTO, and middle school, you got it from some, but not all, because we're working, it's 2 jobs, we're trying to keep on track of everything. And in high school, it's like, well, they have grown, they need to know how to function and do this kind of stuff on their own. And you don't always get the support, not to say that there aren't those parents that are awesome and majorly supportive, especially for those kids who participate in sports and the band. But what about the ones who don't? Okay, and how do we take care? It seems like the more I talk about things, the more questions it raises for me and for how it affects my practice and what I do. There's more important things going on in this world than recording your silly little podcast. Nobody's going to want to interview you, and nobody's going to want to listen to you talk for gosh knows how long. And so I know with all those days that, man, I probably could have sealed up 100 different podcasts on 100 different topics, talking about 100 different things that would have some importance and relevance in the world. But you know what? I got to be honest. I was not feeling it. I was not feeling it at all. And I was struggling, as so many people, I think, have struggled. There's some people who thrive on organization and they just had it all down. And it's like, okay, work from home from this time to this time. I'm going to do this. From this time to that time, I'm going to do that. And I'm sorry, my ducks were not all in a row. I could not get it together. I could do a nice brave soldier kind of look in the meeting. I had my little green screen and I could hang with you on some of those Zoom meetings. But I was starting to worry because my mantra had been, you know what, we're going to be a better people, a better society on the other side of this. We're going to learn things about ourselves that are going to make us better. And maybe even especially for education, maybe the way we do it now will be better. It'll be different. It'll be new. It'll be more connected with our students. Man, because we're going to have to personalize, especially for them now, because, man, they know the whole internet has opened up to them and they know that there's access to all kinds of learning and that they learn in different ways. And I just knew we were going to be better, that the powers that be are going to realize that, you know what, working yourself from like 9 to 5, 8 to 6, 7 to 7 might not be the best thing in the world, not for our souls, not for our growth, not for our spiritual being, that maybe there are ways to do this work in like a little bit of time, and maybe we can change how we do and think about things, and that this was our time to kind of reconnect and get it right. And that's honestly what I thought. And I'm not quite giving up on that vision of what it might look like on the other side. I think there's still a shot, and I'm going to stay forever optimistic that we will be in a better place, and that maybe education will be different, public education especially, after all is said and done. Because for some students, maybe being in a class with a bunch of other students and getting kind of the cookie cutter center of the road, this is what I need to give you so you can pass a test environment is not good enough for them to be educated, for us to call that school. Maybe that doesn't work for them. Maybe for some kids, they need that connection. They need to be there with a teacher, with somebody who cares about them and about their learning and how they learn, and takes the extra steps to make sure that they can get access to the information. And then I worry that, especially looking back at some of the kids who we were unable to connect with, who were not turning in assignments, were not returning calls, we couldn't get a hold of anybody, who were part of that digital divide, because they might not have internet access. So yeah, they might have this laptop and they got to take it home and even keep it home this summer. Are they still able to do anything? And if so, what are they doing? Are they just playing Minecraft, or are they learning how to code Minecraft? And are they doing things to kind of expand and push and envision what they want to do and what they want to be and what they want to learn? Because pretty much that's what the internet net access can provide. But are they going for it? Have we taught them enough so that now in this 90, 100, 200 days, however long, of social distancing and mask wearing and all the things that are needed for us to endure this pandemic, that our students, are they still learning? Are they seeking to be lifelong learners? Or are they only there to pass tests and please us because we're their teachers? Just something I was thinking about. In any case, different heavy, weird thoughts in my head, and that was one reason I didn't want to throw up and throw out a podcast, because I felt like there wasn't anything to learn. I did have a chance to interview a few people, so in some upcoming episodes that I'm going through now and editing, we're going to talk to some of the people that I did have a chance to talk to about different things to kind of inform your practice and what you're planning to do come the fall, because I think everything is going to look a lot different in the fall. So we have to be prepared for that. Honestly, I have no idea how to prepare for it. I'm going to be quite frank and honest as I look at some of the emails back and forth and oh my goodness, your inbox like my inbox? If it is, you have to tell me in the comments, because I have just been bombarded with all kinds of e-learning and reopening and everything that's going to rearrange, transform, and integrate all this great stuff this year. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if any of it is going to be worth it. Whether we will be able to come back. If we do, how different is it going to look? I just don't know how you can social distance. I cannot imagine elementary school without the high fives and the hugs that you get from those kids. And even my high schoolers, my freshmen, who are so grown and so, it's all about me. It's all at the end of the world. I just know our need to touch, to connect is a strong one. And I know that's going to be something that will be hard to do as we come back in the fall. I also know that with, again, everything that's going on in the media, in the news, whether it relates to the disease or whether it relates to now as we sit mid-June with all of the marches and all of the calls for change and all of the support of Black Lives Matter, how is that going to impact what we do? Because if we come back, and I think a lot of people are thinking, hey, we just got to come back and get these kids in school and get the learning and get that gap. And I'm thinking, oh no, we got to deal with what is real and what is here and what is before us. Because it seems like we are at an inflection point in our society. And if we don't realize that, hey, something just ain't right. And what other educational podcast is going to give you the Keith Sweat quotes? I think not. And that's why I thank you for being here, a part of the Year of APing Dangerously podcast, as we seek to learn, to grow, to understand. But as I was saying, if we don't really look at and think about and deal with what is going on as far as race and equity, and having those conversations with our stakeholders, whether they are our staff and peers or our community and our students. Because I'm telling you, coming from a high school that is probably not as diverse as some of the schools within our district, I know it's on top of mind for a lot of our students. And in fact, I had one student who, was just kind of so concerned about things she saw on social media. She actually was upset that some students from another high school had posted some Confederate flags and derogatory comments and use of the N-word. And she actually sent a letter to not just the principal of that school and those APs, but to the principals and APs all across the district, as well as some folks on a state level, because she's actually putting together a petition to kind of ban the Confederate flag on all school campuses. But just that kind of energy and effort coming from the young people. And I'm sure there are other young people who are feeling passionately about what we're dealing with and what we're going through as a society. And our roles as leaders, as educators, is to let those kids express those voices and to see where it takes them and do the teaching and the learning through listening to our kids, because it's also going to be a part of our healing. I often forget how important that is. And I think one of the lessons, I think personally, that I've had to learn was almost 10 years ago in the aftermath of 9/11. And I just know that prior to that, the year 2001 was actually a pretty cool one for me. I remember some key things that stood out for me. And in May of that year, I actually got to do a bike race that started at the World Trade Center. And it actually was 40 miles. It hit all 5 boroughs of New York. That's Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, and finally finished over in Staten Island. So that was just a big thing, because I had worked very hard to at least be able to finish this 40-mile ride. And I'm not going to lie, there were parts where I was just tired. And when I hit that Verrazano Narrows Bridge, there was a part of me that had to walk that bike over. Flash forward to some 15 years later, that I actually did that ride again with some good friends, Natalie and Judy, and I was actually able to make it over that bridge without having to walk my bike. So that was one good or one positive benefit. In any case, that year, I remember a couple different things about that particular year. I remember seeing U2 a couple times in concert, and before that September day, that Tuesday, I saw them. But also I remember them coming back after September 11th and playing in Madison Square Garden and performing One and showing the names of all the people who had passed, and just being in Madison Square Garden with 1 million people, with lighters, flashlights, phone lights, all up, all sharing in that one moment, because we were all part of this, I guess, community that I didn't realize New York City and the world at that time was all suffering from a form of post-traumatic stress. We were all kind of carrying this around. You saw it very visibly, especially in people in the days after. I always comment that I think I talked to more people post 9/11 in New York City than the 13 years previous that I had lived there, because we'd all experienced this kind of common thing that kind of had us bound to each other. I think that the same thing is going to be true for us coming back, whether we physically come back into school or whether we virtually come back into school, that our teachers, our staffs, everybody's going to be feeling this kind of this post-traumatic stress of having to kind of shut down and just be home and be away from and apart from each other. And then we're going to have to come back together. Now, again, in the fall, if we're just coming back together virtually, that's going to be hard, because there are people who miss having those face-to-face and real-time connections. And it's going to be hard as leaders. I feel it's hard. Even me sitting through, whether it's an IP meeting or a department meeting, and in front of the camera, having had that acting experience, I can put on the brave soldier face, but it's hard. It's hard to really know that you are making the connection and having the impact that as a leader you would hope that you could have. But it's got to be done. It's going to have to be done, and we're going to have to find a way to do it. So I look forward to it, and I challenge anyone in the comments, if you can let me know your strategies of how to deal with it, because as you can see, I am struggling. As I said before, I have had a chance to talk to a few people to try to get things to get me back on focus, to focus on how to lead in these times, because I think it is going to be challenging times. I am still confident, though, on the other side, that we are going to come out better than we were, doing things differently, I hope, and doing things that are going to be more student focused and also self-care focused, because I'm guilty of it too. I did a thing for quite a long time where I would be usually on a Friday night, the last one to leave my building, because I had to wait till all the buses came back and, made sure everybody had gotten home safely and everything was all set and good. And I would take what I would call the Prius selfie, which was just a picture of my little Prius in a pretty much empty parking lot. And I have a feeling I am not the only administrator, whether you're a principal or an AP, that has what I call that Prius selfie shot. And that might not always be the best thing. Oh yeah, you're there, you're making sure everything gets done and displaying a certain amount of devotion, but are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your family? And I think once we come back, whether we come back virtually, whether we come back in person, that we have to make sure we account and take care of ourselves. Because until we can take care of ourselves and know that we're okay, there's no way we can take care of all those other stakeholders we're responsible for. And that's where I have to apologize. I think one of the reasons I stopped doing podcasts, I couldn't do it because I needed to kind of indulge in some self-care for myself, because I have totally kind of, kind of reverted into some bad habits and have not been able to kind of say, okay, I need to do this, that, and the other thing, and really prioritize. So now that's what I'm working on for the rest of my summer. I have a couple of interviews I am going to edit and share in this podcast, hopefully guide we'll be doing in the fall or what is to come. And I have, again, some personal goals, things that I need to be working on and pushing forward towards. I'd love to know what some of your personal goals are for this summer, some of the things you'll be working on. to help us get to that other side where things do look better, where things are more positive, whether we have a vaccine, whether we're going back in mass or not, whether we're going back in person or going back virtually. What are some of the things that you are doing for your own self-care, for your own personal growth, so that you push forward as far as being the educator, the instructional leader that you need to be in your building. So that is something that if you could share with me in the comments. I know on this particular podcast, you can reach it however you reach your podcast, whether you're on our Buzzsprout site or if you are on Apple or Spotify, just a million ways to get the podcast. So we hope you are enjoying it. You can always reach us at the Year of APing Dangerously .com. I know that is a mouthful, but it is basically the name of the podcast with the .com attached. So if you visit us on that page, there is a way to connect to let us know what you'd like to hear on the podcast. If you are an assistant principal or even a principal or a building leader, a district leader, and have a story to share, by all means, you are welcome on the podcast. Please contact us so that we can get your information and make you a part of the podcast, because your story is one worth hearing. And especially that origin story. I'm a big fan of the origin story. So by all means, when our guests come on, we do ask for your origin story. How and when did you get into education and your journey? Because I know everybody's journey is a little different, but we all have that goal of making a difference in people's lives as we help to inform and educate. So we want to share what we know, and that's what it's all about. What's the conclusion? What's the point? What's going to happen in these times? I do not know. I do not have any answers. I do not have any permanent solutions, but I promise I will keep talking and interviewing and digging in to see where we can find those common grounds, to see where we can make understanding, to make things better as we go forward in this new school year. I worry and I pray for everyone's safety. I know for myself, this COVID-19 has kind of hit pretty hard, as I've actually lost 2 family members who were in the same nursing home, one actually to COVID-19 and one pretty much, my uncle didn't have the disease, but I think he might have pretty much died from a broken heart, finding out that his sister had passed from COVID-19. So for me, having not put out a Year of APing Dangerously episode in forever, I apologize. I will be more on my game and getting more to you. But I will be dedicating this particular episode to my Aunt Ida and my Uncle Sam. As I remember them, I thank you for being a part of this journey, as I hope to become a better leader and help you to become better in your educational leadership goals.
The Year of APing Dangerously. The Year of APing Dangerously.
Thank you for listening. For show notes and more, visit yearofapingdangerously.com.